Hi everyone, welcome to Killer Bites, a show where we talk about true crime stories while cooking tasty meals. You're probably thinking it's a bit of an odd combo, but we find it's a nice way to lighten the mood while still garnering awareness for the case. Today on Killer Bites, we'll be talking about the case of Angela Hammond while making mac and cheese hot dogs. If you'd like to cook with me, you can find the recipe in the description below. In 1991, Angela Hammond stepped into a phone booth to call her fiancé Rob, who was at his house just 7 blocks away. The two were chatting when suddenly Rob heard Angela scream, so he jumped in his car and raced to the phone booth. As he was driving up the road, Rob heard Angela scream his name from a truck that was speeding past them the opposite way. That was the last time anyone would ever see Angela again. I'm gonna get started by making a cranberry ketchup, starting off with cranberry sauce, tomato paste, water, and a spice mixture. So Angela Hammond was this 20-year-old gal living in Clinton, Missouri in the 1990s. She was described by people as popular, go Angela, outgoing, and fun-loving. Her favorite thing to do was cruise around town in her red 1987 Mustang. In November of 1990, Angela started dating this guy named Rob Schaefer. He was an 18-year-old athlete who was planning on joining the military soon. By January, Angela found out that she was going to be bringing a little one into the world. The couple quickly got engaged to prepare for their new baby, which was due in September. And Angela got a job working at a bank while taking classes at Central Missouri State. But Angela and Rob's newly engaged bliss would come to a premature end when Angela would disappear from a phone booth a few months later, never to be seen again. On April 4th, 1991, Angela and Rob spent the day hanging with their two friends, Kyla and Marcia, at a weenie roast. Okay, two things. One, a weenie roast is easily one of my favorite combinations of words on the planet. And two, where the hell have all the weenie roasts gone? You guys, we have got to start planning weenie roasts again. What's better than an event catered to everyone just sitting down and eating hot dogs? Come on. Killer Bites Vegan Weenie Roast 2022, let's go. The group goofed around and partied that night, and at around 9 o'clock, Angela had to drop Rob off at his house because he was babysitting his younger brother. They planned to meet after his mom got home from work and relieved him of his babysitting duties. 18. Technically an adult, but no idea what you're doing. I remember it well. Angela and Kyla cruised around town for an hour, and at around 11:15 that night, Angela dropped Kyla off at her house. At this point, Angela was like, you know what? I'm starting to get kind of tired. And she told Kyla she was gonna stop at a payphone to call Rob and let him know that. So Angela went to this payphone because it was the 90s and cell phones weren't a thing and life was a bit more difficult. She got there right around 11:15 or 11:30. The phone booth was at an intersection that was only 7 blocks away from Rob's house. Angela was on the phone with him and told him that she was tired and was just gonna call it for the night. She was also 4 months preggo, so I don't blame her. She rallied pretty long that night for a party of 2. At one point during the phone call, Angela was like, hey babe, this car's been circling me while I've been on the phone with you. She told Rob that this guy in a green Ford pickup truck had circled the parking lot several times. She didn't seem concerned at first, but when the car pulled into the spot next to her car and the man got out, that's when she started to panic. I would have been panicking the second I entered the phone booth, but I guess my 21st century is showing. I can't even imagine what was running through her head by that point. The man got out and used the phone in the booth next to her, and Angela started to describe his appearance to Rob along with his truck. Yes, go Angela, you smart cookie. She described the beat up late model green Ford as well as the man driving it. Apparently he was this dirty, scruffy looking man with glasses and long hair. He left the phone booth without making a call and started heading back to his truck. Angela told Rob that the man now had a flashlight and appeared to be looking around in his truck for something. Rob was trying to calm her down and reason with her and was like, maybe that phone is broken and he's just waiting to use yours. And Angela kind of hadn't considered that and was like, yeah, you're right. Maybe I'm just overreacting. From the other end of the phone, Rob heard Angela ask the man if he needed to use the phone, and he said he'd try the other one again in a minute. After that, they were both kind of like, okay, see, there we go, and changed the subject, and they got back to their conversation. But a few seconds later, he heard Angela scream and the phone hitting the side of the phone booth. The next thing he heard was a man's voice say, I didn't need to use the phone anyway. And the line went dead. This is like a horror movie. Like, I'm telling you the story and I'm still terrified. I can't even imagine being Rob on the other end of that line and hearing this all happen. Now I'm going to bake the hot dogs in the oven. Rob immediately dropped the phone, ran to his car, and sped to the intersection where the payphone was. A green truck then sped past him, going the opposite direction. Rob could hear Angela screaming his name from the truck. He was horrified and threw his car in reverse in order to catch the guy, but he didn't realize he was damaging his transmission in the process. He followed the truck for 2 miles, but his transmission failed when he made a sharp right, and he helplessly watched as the truck sped away with Angela. Rob flagged down a passing driver on the road and begged her to follow the car, but the driver refused, instead offering Rob a ride to the police station. I want to be mad at the lady for not following the truck, but I get it. I probably wouldn't either. I would think Rob was trying to kidnap me, honestly. That was nice of her to give him a ride to the station at least. Around midnight, Rob reported the incident to the police, giving them all the details of the man and his truck. An extensive search was launched for Angela, with the description she'd provided of her captor and the truck information made readily available to the public. The State Highway Patrol checked hundreds of trucks that matched the description, but unfortunately, no dice. The case also proved to be difficult because there were so few leads to go on after the initial details Rob had given them. Angela's dad's first reaction upon hearing the story was the same as the investigators. "What do you mean your transmission went out?" Detectives agreed, and that's when they started to question the legitimacy of Rob's story. The thought clicking. On April 11th, FBI agents grilled Rob for 5 hours and had him take a polygraph and voice stress test. He passed them both. They eventually cleared Rob, and some witnesses came forward and corroborated his story. 2 women said they saw a truck with a suspicious person in it hanging around the payphones shortly before Angela disappeared at 11:30 that night. They also described that the truck had this distinct mural of a water scene painted on the back window. They said they saw the man lean back in his seats, and that's when they realized they'd seen him before. 2 nights earlier, the women claimed to have seen the man driving his truck slowly down Highway 52. And you definitely never forget a creep in a green truck. They also said they'd even pulled into the parking lot to talk to Angela because they mistook her for one of their friends. They said they drove in to say hello before realizing it wasn't their friend, so they quickly left. The woman who brought Rob to the police station that night also could confirm that she saw the beat-up green truck parked next to Angela's car that night in the lot. With the confirmation that the green truck existed, suspicion fell off of Rob. Using all the witness statements, investigators tirelessly searched for a 2-toned green Ford pickup truck with a white roof and a mural of a fish jumping out of water painted on the rear window. One witness said the license plate might have contained the letters X and Y, but it was so muddy and rusty that they couldn't remember any other letters for certain. The driver was a young white male between the ages of 20 and 35. He wore glasses, had a beard, a mustache, dark collar-length hair, and might have been wearing a dark-colored baseball hat with overalls. Investigators spent months tracking down nearly 2,000 trucks registered in Missouri that fit the description, but ultimately turned up empty-handed. They also had no idea if the truck had been registered in Missouri or not, which made it even more difficult to find, even though this was a really distinct car. I mean, if you got an Amber Alert today that was like, look out for a silver Prius, you might be shit out of luck. But a green beat-up truck with a painting on the back is not your everyday car. With Rob ruled out, investigators started to pose a new theory, that Angela was a potential victim of a serial killer targeting young women in the Missouri area. They were also trying to connect Angela's case to 2 other missing persons cases that occurred months earlier nearby. A few months before Angela stepped into that phone booth, a 42-year-old woman named Trudy Jean Darby was closing up at her convenience store when she noticed a suspicious-looking man standing outside. Trudy Jean. What an incredible name. Anyway, Trudy was closing up and the guy outside was really starting to freak her out, so out of caution, she called her adult son, Waylon, to come over. Waylon! Trudy, you know how to pick a name. I love it. She asked Waylon if he could come help her close out the store for the night, and he said he'd be right over. He arrived within minutes of hanging up, but both his mother and the $200 she was supposed to leave in the till for the morning crew were gone. 2 days later, her body was found in a river nearby with holes from a .38 caliber in the back of her head. A month later, on February 27th, 30-year-old Cheryl Ann Kenny disappeared after closing out the convenience store she worked at in Vernon County, Missouri. Remind me to never agree to a night shift at a convenience store. Her car was found abandoned outside the locked building the next morning. The janitor said there was a male customer still inside the store with Cheryl when he left, and 2 people in the area reported hearing a scream at about the time she would have exited the building. Then, on April 4th, Angela became the 3rd woman to be abducted in West Central Missouri in under 3 months. This is getting serial. Investigators met multiple times to share notes and compare all 3 cases, and while they all believed the cases were connected, it was impossible to prove it with certainty. They investigated multiple reports in Missouri of attempted nappings, but they were unable to uncover any evidence that tied the cases to the 3 missing women. During that summer, the authorities got a tip that seemed promising. They heard about a guy who'd been picked up for attacking a teenage girl who allegedly owned a 1969 Ford pickup truck that he'd recently repainted from green to white. Oh snap. Now we're cooking. However, this guy was able to prove that he repainted his truck months before Angela disappeared, so they had to drop him as a suspect. Well, sheesh. A year later, Angela's case was featured on the hit TV show Unsolved Mysteries, which generated over 600 tips coming in about the case. Within days of it airing, 2 residents in Texas reported seeing the green truck in their town on different occasions. This led the authorities to investigate the possibility of Angela's case being linked to another missing persons case, that of a 17-year-old named Kelly Wilson who was snatched in 1992. Unfortunately, they were unable to establish a connection, and not a single one of the tips that came in during that time panned out. But at least it made people more aware of the case. That's the thing about these shows. You never know when the right person might stumble across it, decide to watch it, then be able to recognize the Night Stalker as he walks in their neighborhood. In March of 1992, 22-year-old Melissa Northrup was taken from a convenience store she was working at just south of Waco, Texas. Just like Trudy's case, $200 had been taken from the register, and it was later found that the mass executioner Kenneth McDuff was behind it. He was arrested 2 months later in Missouri after a coworker recognized him from a segment of America's Most Wanted. It is believed Kenneth McDuff committed at least 9 slayings in Texas between 1966 and 1992, and possibly in other states. Now I'm going to assemble these hot dogs, topping them with mac and cheese and the cranberry ketchup. Because of the Missouri connection, the authorities wanted to question his involvement in the cases of Trudy, Cheryl, and Angela, but he refused to cooperate. A search of his apartment failed to turn up any evidence in their cases, and it's unknown whether he currently is still a suspect in the case. In 1993, detectives decided to search a 60-acre farm in Lafayette County, where there had been rumors that a former renter had helped bury Angela's body along with the truck on the property. They hadn't investigated the lead at first once they were able to confirm that the man didn't own a green truck and had an alibi for the night Angela was missing. But when an informant came forward with the same tip, and then the local newspaper ran a story about a psychic who had supposedly spoken to Angela's spirit and sensed clues when she visited the property, the investigators were like, fine, we'll search it. As they were expecting, nothing turned up. The next year, 2 men were arrested in connection with Trudy Darby's case. A man implicated himself and his half-brother as the ones who took Trudy that night when she was closing up the store, and admitted to later dumping her body in the river. The investigators hoped this would lead to a break in either of Cheryl or Angela's cases, but nothing ever came of it. But then, in April of 2021, on the 30th anniversary of Angela's disappearance, the Clinton Police Department shared a Facebook post saying they'd made significant progress on one of their leads. Apparently, some guy was an informant for busting an illegal narcotics operation when he testified in a court proceeding. The informant's identity was disclosed during the case, and soon after that, the guy got a ransom note sent to him. It was sent to him with these letters that were cut out and pasted from magazines like in the movies. The note addressed the guy by the number assigned to him to protect his identity in court and mentioned his estranged wife by name. The guy was obviously spooked, but nothing came of it. The envelope was postmarked on the exact date Angela went missing, April 4th, 1991. The informant's wife and daughter both lived in Clinton, Missouri at the time, and the daughter's name was Angela. The theory now is that the criminals whose operation was busted wanted revenge on the informant, so they decided to take his daughter. They think they took the wrong Angela. OMG. They've allegedly spoken with several people of interest and potential witnesses who have helped them develop this theory and have not had any reason to refute it yet. Detectives have asked if anyone has any information on Angela or has heard a similar story to this to contact them. And those are the most recent updates we have on this 30-year-old case. If it really comes out that the wrong Angela was taken, that will seriously be one of the most tragic reasons I've ever heard of. I mean, obviously, all of the cases we cover are tragic, but there's something about that detail that just makes it so much worse. And that will just be the cranberry ketchup on top of the mac and cheese dogs. Thanks so much for watching. I'll see you next time.